This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. For this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Oh, this is the day that the Lord has made.
To get us started and to understand where it all began and where we came from, I'm going to ask the founding members of Kunzwana, my council members of Kunzwana, my Chigama and my Manuwa.
Ndakabatikana zvikuru.
But I am very
Asi ndichataura how we started this organization.
but I'm going to talk about how we started the organization. I'm very touched.
1993 takaita meeting yedu ku Amfik.
In 1993, we had our meeting in Amfik.
Ndo kwatakaungana savakadzi vamapurisa, mama vaishanda kupolisi.
That's where we were gathered as wives of policemen, and Mom Amai used to work for the police.
Saka isu taive vakadzi vamapurisa.
So we were the wives of policemen.
After that organization, Amfik.
After the organization of Amfik, after the meeting they had at Amfik,
pane zvakangoitikawo zvokuti zvinongoitika munyikawo. So
there's a few things that happened that were disrupting, as we know with how things go in the country and politics.
ndaive chairperson weHarare province.
I was the chairperson of the Harare province
vakadzi vemapurisa.
for the wives of policemen.
Ndaishanda very close namama nokuti ndivo vaive national secretary, police coordinator.
I was working very closely with Amai because she was the national coordinator for the police program.
Tafamba zvakadaro navava mai ava vachazotaura zvimwe zvandinenge ndasiya. Takafunga kuti zvinhu zvazvadai toita sei, pakangoitawo zvinongoti netsei asi chimboita
As we progressed along the way, now you see, this is what happens if you say too many things. As we progressed along the way, I will go along and talk a little bit about what happened, and my colleague here is going to elaborate on some of the things that took place.
Saka takazofunga kuti zvinhu zvakunetsa uku tadii kufunga kuti titangewo yedu organization.
So we realized that being in the police and working with the police, we need to think about starting our own organization.
Takafunga kuti taakuda kutanga organization yedu pachedu. Saka mama Emma Malunge vakatiudza kuti ivo vakamboita zvemaclub kuHighfields.
So we thought about starting our own organization, and my Mama Malunge actually told us that she had started doing club work in Highfield.
And vaiziva kutambudzika kwaiita vanhu kwavakanga vachigara.
And she knew the struggles of people where they lived.
Takafunga kuti tave kuinda mumapurazi ndo muna vanhu vasina ruzivo rwokuti chii chiri kuitika mukati menyika.
And we decided that we would go into the farmlands because there were women there that didn't know what was going on in the country.
Saka takaona kuti titange kuungana iye zvino zvinganetse. Approacha Amy.
And then we decided that it was going to be very difficult for them to start. So they approached Dr. Wade.
Dr. Wade ndokubva ati taiti Amy wed ndokubva ati tsvagira Oasis was it Oasis Hotel ndokwatakaneita meeting yedu the whole night.
So Amy managed to get us organized so that we could have our meeting at the Oasis Hotel, which we held all night.
Saka imwe crew yataive nayo
and the rest of the crew we were with,
since vakadzi vamapurisa
since we're all wives of the
vamwe
police, so some of them sort of just disappeared.
Saka takasara takamira tiri 3.
So we were the 3 left standing.
Takatanga manje kugara pasi pomengo ku Greendale.
And then we started our meetings under the mango tree in Greendale, Gelcon.
Pamba pa Emma Malunge.
It's Emma Malunge's residence.
Takabvapo tine vision yokuti tave kuno paridza shoko kumapurazi.
And we left that meeting with a vision that we were going to now take this message to the farmlands.
Takaenda kuna Prati lawyer. She was a lawyer.
Okay.
Kugoromens. I am a magistrate.
So they went to one of the magistrates, Prati.
Jacqueline Pratt.
Yeah.
Okay. And
tikanotsvaga ma-ideas ikoko
and yeah.
ndokubva tanopiwa ma-ideas kuti endai kucity council kana mabva kucity council movataurira zvamuri kuda kuita.
So Prati was the one who actually gave them the trajectory of the processes that they had to follow to be able to set up this organization or what they wanted to do.
Takabva tikaenda ku-city council.
We left and went to city council.
Takanotanga kuzvintrodusa tichivataurira zvataida kuti tiite kumapurazi.
And we started by telling them what we wanted to do in the farmlands, farming.
But vakatigamuchira zvisiri izvo kuti munoenda kuma-private ningi kiri owners mofunga kuti mabhunu angakuitei kuti musevenze mumapurazi imi.
So we were not well received because they were really mocking us, thinking that how could we go to the white farmers and expect the white farmers to receive us and allow us to execute any programming on their farms.
Saka takanyanya kungovataurira kuti tiri kuda kuita nokuti vanhu veri kumapurazi uko havazivi zviri kuitika in terms of health kana kuti ivo vazvibatsire pachavo.
So we were really determined and forceful in informing that what we wanted to do, which is to educate the women in the farm community, because they didn't know how to look after themselves, nor were they able to actually negotiate for whatever they needed.
Tabva ipapo takazofunga kuti zviri nani timbotimire mbichana. Takambotimire mbichana mama vakatanga manje the very day atabva kucouncil tichifamba murodhi vakati ini ndakuzviregedza ini ndakuenda kunorera mwana womuzukuru wangu mwana wamai ava vakavapona saka ndiyaida kunoreriwa ndikaenda kuzviregedza saka
So apparently after the meeting with the council, Amai almost gave up. She decided she was not going to follow this through and she was going to leave and come and look after my daughter Tasha, because I had just delivered Tasha. I didn't know that day. So I'm just hearing it for the first time.
Saka ndakavati no kwainaya takamira pasi pomuti kwainaya ndikati mama hatimboiti kuti muinde kwamai Nicholas totoda kutobudirira chinhu chatiri kuda kutanga.
So you can see why she's a founding member. She was passionate about it from the beginning. She still got the passion in terms of what she did. So she said what they did was they actually encouraged mom not to give up, and said, we are not going to let you go to England to look after Tasha, but you're going to stay with us and we're going to follow this thing through.
Saka tiri munzira wokuita sezvinei ndokubva vagamuchira foni yokuti mwana wehanzvadzi yavo afa Emma
So while she was so while mom was trying to decide to give this whole thing up, she received a call to say her niece had actually passed away, which made her stay back in Zimbabwe.
Okay. Saka ndisinganyanyi ku process yacho yakawandisa. Saka takatanga kufamba namai ava kumapurazi tichinogogodza mapurazi.
So we started the whole process by actually going door to door on the farms and meeting all the farmers door to door, literally, to start the process.
Havana kutanga kutigamuchira vakafunga kuti tiri kuno influencer zvepolitics.
So they wouldn't initially receive them well because they assumed they were actually coming in to talk about politics to their workers.
Saka nguva ichifamba tichivataurira zvataida, taivataurira kuti munogona kuruza vanhu venyu kana vasina ruzivo rwokuzvichengetedza, kana vasina ruzivo rwokuti kune HIV and AIDS, ndokuti ndonguva yakatanga zvana HIV and AIDS and chii zvese in terms of health.
So we were able to convince the farmers and their wives that unless we educate your workers, you're going to lose them all because they are not knowledgeable about their own personal hygiene and self-care, and especially during the time when HIV was very prominent.
Nekufamba kwenguva takatanga manje vakatanga kubvuma, saka takatanga kuita maclubs mumapurazi, ivo mafarmers akakutidana manje kuti uyai muzoita club kwangu, tichivaticha in terms of development pamapurazi, ivo vachizvisonera zvinhu zvavo nevana vavo vachizivawo kuti HIV and AIDS inoitwa sei, saka takave peer educators.
So as time went on, the farmers actually were very receptive to their message, to the farm workers, and they actually started inviting them to the farm, to the different farms, to come in and create and start the clubs for the women, so that they can be educated. And actually, you started being the HIV peer educators for the different farming communities.
Nokufamba kwenguva vakatinyorerawo proposal, tikataurira Amai akatibatsira, taigona kuno 6-7 yaichaya tave kumba kwake chitatibatsire kuti toita sei, ndopata kumba kwa Amai ndokwatakabudisa zita rokuti kunzwana.
So we started working on a proposal that we worked with Amai, and together the women with Amai and Amai, they all created this proposal, and they also commissioned the name Kunzwana Women's Association.
Saka tabva ipapo takatanga kufamba. Matoilets akanga ave kuvakwa mumapurazi nekuti vaifunga kuti matoilet imi ndimi mune problem, vanhu vangu vanoenda bush toilet havana basa nazvo, asi takavataurira kuti no, zvinouraya, is not healthy.
So they started another program where they started with the farming community, starting to commission for building of toilets or loos around the farms, just to mitigate the spread of disease and HIV.
Takazotanga kuti vagare zvakanaka mudzimba, vachidzidzura dzimba dzavo, vachiita sei kuti vagarewo upenyu hwakanaka. Mafarmers akanga ave kuvasapota zvakanyanya.
So they were being really well supported by the farmers, as women particularly were taking the role of actually getting their homesteads working and keeping their hygiene in the home, how they manage their food and all their hygienes.
Takamira takadaro ndo patakazopindura takaona our first donor wehealth injani kana is it Canadian SGM
So we got our first donor basically.
ndo patakatanga kuwana mari yokufamba taifamba netsoka.
Then they, with this money now, they started being able to get further than where they were before. Because before that, they used to actually have to go on foot between farms and in the community.
Tichifamba netennis dzakabvaruka vachiti vanotitaurira chi vanofamba netennis dzakabvaruka nokuti takatisina mari.
And they were walking around with torn trainers and tennis shoes, and people were like, what would these guys tell us when they don't even have proper shoes? And they have no cars. So they were really very much undermined as a result.
Asi takaramba takashingirira.
But we can't, yeah.
Chandaidira. Emma. My Emma. Vaiterera. Vaive good leadership. Vaiterera ukavataurira chinhu vaiterera. Endi vachita nemazvo. Ndofunga ndogomerera pano pari zvino.
What I really liked about Amai was that she listened. She listened and took account of what other people said.
Okay, thank you very much. As you can see, we are here at the book launch. The books are here, some of the living books. So that was what Amai was trying to do. She was trying to tell her story, the story of her work, of her family, and everything in between. And as we can see, there is so much that we can learn from, so much that actually has to be said. At this point in time, ndanchikumbira kuti semafounding ungotipawo karudo.
Kunzwana yakazvara kamwana kadiki zita rako ndianiko budiriro mumaruwa. Kunzwana yakazvara kamwana kadiki zita rako ndianiko budiriro mumaruwa. Budiriro kumaruwa. Budiriro kumaruwa. Budiriro kumaruwa. Budiriro kumakura. Budiriro kumapura. Budiriro kumapura. Budiriro kumapura. Budiriro kumapura. Kunzwana yakazvara kamwana kadiki zita rako ndianiko budiriro kumapura. Kunzwana yakazvara kamwana kadiki zita rako ndianiko budiriro kumapura. Budiriro kumapura. Budiriro kumapura. Budiriro kumapura. Budiriro kumapura.
So allow me to, at this point in time, before we continue, just to welcome our guests of honor and the others that have joined us during the time that we had started. First, I would like to acknowledge Mai Maroa, chairperson of the board of Kunzwana. We welcome you, Amai, and thank you for being with us today. I would also like to welcome Ambassador Rudo Chitiga. She is one of the book critics, and she will have time and she will share with us soon. Welcome, Ambassador Chitiga. And then our guest of honor this afternoon is Dr. Olivia Muchena. Welcome, Dr. Muchena. I think when you joined us, we had just started with our founding members sharing background and information on where it all began. I will hand over back to our founding members to continue with the storytelling.
Tikuda kungoenderera mberi kutaura ndo chimwe chipo chedu chatinacho, asi tikuda kuedza kuti tichizviti muchidimbu toita zvekuverenga tichingotsigira zvanga zvichitaurwa naMai Chingama.
We're just going to continue. We love talking. That's our stories, and that's part of the work that we've had to do. But we'll continue, but we'll try and make it a bit more precise, just so that we manage time.
Tisati tatanga isusu taiita sevanhu vainosora information touya nayo toipa Amai Malunge touya nayo kuti ichiendeswa kuma-offices kwakanga kuchifanirwa kuenda kwaidiwa that information. Saka ndoraive basa redu guru rataita. Saka taifamba stereki.
So the reason why they were actually on the road so much was because they became almost like what we would call researchers on the ground. They would go out and look for the information that was needed and where the gaps are, almost like doing a gap analysis, if you like, of looking for what is the information that's needed and bring it to Amai in terms of them trying to put that all together to create the organization.
Mai Malunge kunyora bhuku hakutishamisi, munhu aigara akabata penzura nebhuku. Vanga vasinei nezvekompyuta. Vaigara vakabata penzura yavo maoko nebhuku. Chese chawaita vainyora.
For Mai Malunge to write a book, it's not a surprise to us because everywhere where she went, she had a paper or a notebook and a pen, and everything that was going on, she did write. And I think the book is a testimony of that.
Yes. Saka ndotanga zvangu apa ungachigara zvangu. Uda kutsidira neshona?
No, that's a bigger challenge.
Okay. Ndatanga ne-background yedu. Kunzwana Women's Association was founded by 3 women after considering the life of the women living on commercial farms mumapurazi. Izvo hazvina kungouya nekuti takangotanga kuti toda kuenda kumapurazi. Zvakatanga nesu wakadzi wemapurisa. Munoziva mumakempi. Saka ndadati uyako. Munoziva mumakempi. Mumakempi maiti hamaigona kudhara kwacho zvaisabvumirwa kuti mapurisa agare kunze kwekempi. Vaifanirwa kugara vese vari mukempi. Saka nemadzimaiwo taisabvumidzwa kunetworka nemadzimai ari kunze.
So this whole thing started by the women who lived in the camps because the police resided in camps, and so their wives and their families also lived in those camps. So that's where it started, because these women were part of the police service, or their husbands were part of the police service.
Our first achievement was being registered as a welfare organization with Rwanda Women's Association in 1993. Imagine, tangotanga 1992, 1993 takarejistwa. Zvakaoma kurejistwa seorganization. Zvinogona kutora kana 5 years chaipo. Asi isusu takaita 1 year tikabva tarejistwa because wanga wakutsikana and kwaingoti kukanobvunzwa kuministry of education kuti tinovaziva vakadai kukoko wakaenda tinovaziva vanodai vanotogotorawo matrainers manesi vachienda nawo vachidi. Saka zvakatibatsira, saka takarejistwa zviri nyore nyore. Then imwe takaita more than 300 clubs were established in Mashonaland, East Midlands and Matabeleland provinces. Kazoenda kumwe kwese kwataienda uku takanga takutodaidzwa varungu vemapurazi ndo vaitaurira shamwari dzavo tine club yakadai iri kuita kuti mumakomboni vedu muchene, iri kuita kuti vanhu vedu vazive nezveutano, iri kuita zvakawanda tive nemapriesthood.
So actually they're saying they ended up extending so far and wide because they were now being invited, because people had heard about the work they were doing in Mashonaland East, and they were really impressed and wanted that knowledge and those expertise to come to their different communities. So they were being invited, so they just ended up going everywhere.
Several networks were established and were able to associate with KWA. Permissions were granted by relevant authorities for KWA to operate freely. Donor funding was sourced for KWA's activities and takaiwana. Atimboti kunyepa mari takaiwana yekuita ma-activities takata kutorwadziwa nema-workshop nei. Several workshops, trainings were held, such as leadership training. Specialized training was also implemented for farm health workers, preschool teachers, home-based carers, HIV and AIDS educators, project planning and management, health and hygiene, sewing, baking, gardening, tie and dye, training nezvakangowanda zvakanga zvichingoitika. Kunzwana Women's Association Matonesa Training Center was built and established. Yapapati apa mukandikanonoke ndinoda kutotaura. Training center iyi haina kumboita chido chedu chekuti tinoda kutanga kuvaka training center. Varungu vekusaidi nekunana Virginia ndo vakati madii kuita training center kuno kuitira kuti vanhu vedu vave padyo netraining center vachiuya.
So she's talking about the training center that was established as part of this portfolio. She said we never actually intended to start a training center, but that the people in Macheke and Mashona,
Yes.
they actually invited and said the farmers especially. So they said, why don't you set up a training center within this locality so that their people didn't have to travel so far? Because what Kundwana started doing was training a lot of women, but they had to travel so much distance either to come to Harare or motorbikes and bicycles. They had been really well equipped by some of the donor funds to facilitate the women coming for these trainings. But the Mashonal and East farmers said it was too far for people to come. Why don't you establish a training center? So that's how the training center came.
Training center yakavepo mukungoona zviri kuitika kutraining center zviri kubuda
So
kubva
all
kuvanhu
that
vanenge vaenda
mentioned
kutraining
ICC
center.
is also part of the skills that women and men, I think we then started including men.
Men, yes.
That started acquiring skills, and that's some of the merchandise that they've actually produced from the training center.
And chimwe chatakakanwa ndechekuti isusu patakatsvaga kweso takazobva kuofisi yedu kwamai Mashudu ndokwakanga kune ofisi yedu pasi pemumengo nekamwe kavakazogadzira kaofisi kavakagadzira kubva taakushandira ikoko. Takazobva ikoko taakutya kuti vana bhekava vanove vakatidzinga ndokubva tawanirwa ofisi panapa pana chiremba roti panapa.
So, as we said earlier, all their meetings and the establishment of the organization was under the mango tree. We will never cut that mango tree. Under the mango tree at Greendale, that was their office, that was their creation. And then Amai had then also started in the cottage, an office which they were using, but that became small. And then they established this office for the Ghana Women's Association.
Yes, a full-time office, it's number 1 chiremba roti ndoinoi nekutraining center iko zviriko zvakawandisa kune ofisi kune mablogs kune chii mamwe maorganization vari kutouya vachireta vachibhuka vachiita maworkshop avo iwayo. Saka panyaya dziya dzekutsvaga mari isu yedu imwe iri kubva kutraining center zhinji yacho ndokwairi.
So actually that's an important issue, an important point that as they developed and started doing all these skills and working from the training center, they started generating their own money. So it actually became more sustainable as they generated their own money rather than
aiwa kupiwa tikupiwa idasi takuzviitira umutsva. Maconstituency atakasangana nawo ndiwo kungoti pamwe dzimwe nguva taimboshaya funding, ndosaka takazoita maplan ese ekuti toita sei netraining center iyi kuti itipo tumari tione chinhu kanobuda. Saka dzimwe nguva taimboshayawo nyaya unoziva mari yekukumbira inonetsa. Munhu akati handidi hapana zvaunomuita mune maprograms arikuda kuenderera. Saka haiko zvino zvichazonyatsopedziswa newachapedzisa mubhuku. The deteriorating situation with the economy as well as the land reform exercise meant that a lot of our club members left their respective farms in search of greener pastures or were shifted elsewhere. Asi chinondifadza chakanyanya, nyangwe zvangu ndataura this statement, chinondifadza chakanyanya kwavari ikoko vane zvavari kutoita. Taive nevataiti Mai Chakuma iko zvinezvi vakatotanga organization vaingoshanda mumabrazimo vachingoita mumabrazimo. Iko zvino vakatanga organization yekubatsira vana vanoita zvokuputa mbanje vaya, vakabatsirana nevamwe. Saka vakutoshanda vari kumapurazi, vari kupi, vari kumaruzevha ikoko ndo vatori pamberi kusona, kuruka, kubheka, kuita sei. Saka kuchema kwedu hakunyanyi, vakatotora information vakaenda nayo. Saka vari kuishandisa kwavari ikoko.
You need to translate that. I think the legacy that she's talking about is the fact that what she says as a founding member is that the legacy they've left is the fact that all the people who moved via Kunzwana and via the training center are equipped with something, and at the moment as we speak, they all do something in their rural communities, be it baking, be it sewing, being carpentry, being whatever. They were all trained somehow to be able to do some kind of skills,
Yes.
and that's something that you're very proud of
Exactly.
as a founding member.
Thank you. Right. As from registration 1993, 2 years down the line, I came in as a teacher in the commercial farming areas in Macheke. So apanda kuverenga hangu ne-English. What I want to say is, what does Emma mean? Emma. E standing for empowering, that is women in their communities, improve production and value chain, nothing goes to waste. M, it means monitoring, a hands-on method in projects taught to sustain their families, surplus for sale. Another M again means mothers of. Every creation on this planet was born or it's there through a woman or mother and nurtured. Mwana ndimai, amai ona mwana. A, it's Africa, especially Zimbabwe is less privileged in resettlement, commercial lands and commercial farming areas. Yes, yes. Emma's part of her vision was to see that every woman, mother takes stance in development of her community, the country Zimbabwe at large. A true servant of development taught us to work for our families in various projects, e.g. gardening, and also to help others out there. She taught us of being human enough to help one another in our communities, humanism. As we were in our groups or clubs, we sang Kunzwana yakazvara kamwana kadiki diki sekuimba kwandaita. This was so in terms of cooking, baking, and whatever. This motivated many women to join choir clubs for these improved standard of living through the taught skills. I have come to appreciate the importance and value of family relationships taught to us by the golden girl Emma. Gender mainstreaming in HIV and AIDS, group dynamics, study circles, health and hygiene, just to mention a few. HIV and AIDS pandemic issue, health was a big blow to our communities. Emma intervened to take chances of lecturing to families, clubs, with the help of Ministry of Health, to facilitate self-control and respect your partner, is what she was always saying to women because of the divorce rates which were skyrocketing in our communities. Lobby and advocacy. She lobbied to the farm owners to build decent homes and toilets in the commercial farming areas, of which was done. In the resettlement areas, we were taught to build Abalu toilets. Adult literacy was also introduced in the areas. On the same note, she joined hands with women and initiated land lobby women group to get land on the gender aspect. I also benefited land where I grow small grains, maize, and wheat.
All right.
I have 12 cattle, my own, 6 goats, and road runners for my own. Adult literacy covered everything. e.g., socially. I remember one time in a certain hotel, remember from the commercial farming areas, we were brought to Cresta Lodge. We were brought to Cresta Lodge. I remember one time in a certain hotel with our fellow women in the dining hall. They took away the displayed apples, oranges, pumpkins for their kids. I was the area leader there, and I was called in by the catering personnel to tell women what it meant to decorate veggies in the dining. It was a lesson learned because they wanted to take this. I now realize how difficult and tough it was to get something done, but the golden girl never gave up. Emma worked with all the relevant ministries and the ministers of our government in development. Honorable Let Alois Mangwende stood by her to have land for the training center for women to be trained rather than to be trained in schools around the farms. After his death came in Honorable Let Bigi Joel Matiza, again helping maybe with the drawing of the plans for the training center. I am not forgetting Minister Stembiso Nyoni, SMEs, and my Olivia Mchena. I'm happy she's here. Very happy indeed. They stood by her. She had her hands on in every aspect of Kunzwana programs, very much, only to mention a few. The training center built gender. Men and women flocked in the relevant programs and projects lent. Men kusada kukundwa, e.g. carpentry, because women were now doing carpentry. So the men came in and the basare. It brought a greater change in our lives, for we socialized with maybe a lot of people from Blawayo, Kwekwe, Marondera, Goromonzi, etc. And this improved our standard of living without fear. Kuti baba vakaenda na Marwei. Let him go. He leaves you in the house. You stay there, you are doing your project. We are not going to go. From there, you start. My friend and I formed a trust called Heart to Rescue to stop drug abusers. And I, myself, Beatrice, I have a home called Amai Children's Home. Why? It's because my former farm workers who were left behind, their children were homeless, no food, no shelter, they were not going to school. So we got to tunaenda kwa medem Guramatunu doba waiba praise wangu. Saka I got them all. I embraced them. They are my children. Ndini are my children's home to make their dreams, hopes, and aspirations come true. If one doesn't understand the experience, the difficult it takes to earn the comfort provided by the late beloved mother Emma, then they will never value it. Appreciation of hard working, suffering for other women to get things done. Without her, there would not be a successful me today. I have the great respect and honor in my community because I am a resource person of development. I will never forget her advices with a soft-spoken voice. Mama Emma, rest in peace.
Pamsoroi makudzidzwa ine handichataura zvakawanda takungodimurira nekuti vamwe tine chirwere chekutaura kunze kungatoedza ndichita whatever you want to do, I mean, it's okay.
It's a permanent job.
Ndangofunza kuti ndichataura zvidiki because Amai Malunge mukoma wangu pachivanhu chedu, saka ndida kuti nditaure matangiro avakaita tiri kumba kwavo kuGreendale. Ndine form 1 kusvika form 4 ndoita income generating skills andakakopa kuna Amai Malunge, ndobva ndaita primary. Kana muchienda kumakuwa kunoiga vanhu mukama muchifamba makona kwenda kumakuwa kudai mukangoti fambei munobva mangoona pakanyorwa kunzi ngiri Glen Forest Development Center. Ndini ndakachitanga, saka ndatanga kudaro Amai Malunge vanga vasati vatanga ndobva vandiudzawo zvikanzi ndafunga kuti ndiitewo chinyi club yemadzimai, because Amai Malunge vakagara vari munhu wemadzimai kare nakare. Saka Amai Malunge ndobva vazonditi iwo ndoda kuti ndibatsirewo madzimai emabhurasi. Ndikati tinobatsirana, ndobva ndavabatsirawo kuti titaure nevanhu vemabhurasi.
Yes, so her dad was a policeman. So as you heard, the Society of Police Women and everything, they were all working together, including in Macheke.
Teaching yakandinakidza, asi ndinoda kuti kushanda necommunity kwakadini kwakanaka. Nawe ndine zita nyowani kana iyo Amai Malunge wakafa achiriziva rekuti Mother Teresa. Anozviziva ndobatsira vanhu vakawanda, vana vadiki. Ndofunga vamwe venyu maimbondiona ndichirova jaivi naAmai Mugabe. Ndini chair board of trustees redandiko.
Yes, she's talking about her development. She did Cambridge, and she also was trained as a teacher, and she is part of the liberation struggle. And so when she came back, and they were all, involved in a lot of things. And at one time, I think some people saw her dancing with Mrs. Mugabe and so on.
Zvakawanda zvandakaita kana zvandiri ndatenda hangu.
Thank you. In saying
Kururudza izvi.
Yes, my name is Anna Mupawa, and I joined much later Kunzwana as a board member. I am naming what I'm talking about as a tribute to Mrs. Emma Malunge, late president of Kunzwana Women's Association. I was recommended by someone to Mrs. Malunge, then the executive director of Kunzwana Women's Association, to be a board member. I've been serving as a board member responsible for development for many years, and what a pleasure. Mrs. Malunge was a lady of deep thoughts and dedicated to helping others, like you have heard. She was soft in speaking and very principled. She based some of her principles on the Holy Bible. She was able to translate what the Bible said into practice. No wonder we are here today in her honor, and I am sure the book being launched today will bear witness to some of the things I want to say about her. Most of us are aware of the following principle: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is a command based on the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. All things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. The Mosaic law contains a parallel commandment: whatever is hurtful to you, do not do to any other person. This is in Luke and Matthew. Mai Malunge vakandiudza kakawanda. She told me many times, and this is why I'm standing here, so that I honor what she said because it's very important to me and to others. Mai Malunge told me kuti zveunoitira vamwe zvichaitirwa kwauri. What you do to other people will be done to you. So she translated that commandment in the Bible. I found this to be very deep and instructive. Some people would simplify this thinking as karma, signifying the consequences of all the actions of a person in their current and the previous lives and the chain of cause and effect in morality. To me, my Malunge's thinking made me more conscious of my actions every day, made me think before taking any action, and also to accept the consequences of my actions. Her thinking and actions enriched my life and the lives of others. In her own life, Mrs. Malunge worked with less privileged women, like you heard, before she founded Kunzwana with these ladies. What a turn of events. God helped her and others to found an organization that led her and to found Matonesa Training Center in Macheke, elevating her charity work with others to a very high level. She was given an opportunity of fulfilling her passion, clearly consequence of her earlier work. There is nothing as fulfilling as being able to do what you are passionate about. I remember Mrs. Emma Malunge with nostalgia, respect, honor, lots of love for her. May her soul rest in peace.
Thank you very much. Our guest of honor, the board member of Kunzwana Women's Association, and allow me to say all protocol observed. Thank you so much. So I'll just share a few points that I would like to share this afternoon in terms of the women's movement. And thank you, Sis Amy, for inviting me. I also had the privilege of working with Mrs. Malunge, and then I was a very young girl, and this is a privilege standing before you and also presenting on this very important occasion. So the points that I would like to share, I'll just focus on the points that I've listed here so that I will not waste time. The first one is looking at the women's organizing. We have had the founding members of Kunzwana Women's Association talking about the simple organizing that happened when the organization started within the farms. And you know, these are hard to reach areas where women are, and they were being left out in the struggle for women empowerment. And you find that they would meet in the farms and also meeting under the trees, you know, very simple and very basic, not the complicated ways that we are doing now, but that also helped in empowering women. And we also would want to look at the testament, you know, Mai Malunge, how she worked and the legacy that she has left, that it was very instrumental to the building of the women's movement. And some of the examples here are that the practical gender needs are also strategic needs, because this was the main entry point that she also used in terms of focusing on the hygiene and the health of women, and also that also enabled the women in terms of raising their consciousness on strategic issues. You start with the practical gender needs, and then once they're also empowered, then you're also focusing on the other areas where they would also want to participate in decision-making issues. So also the issue of social transformation is also very critical, where we are looking at social transformation beginning with the individual. The information from Mai Malunge and the organization, it also improved the lives of ordinary women in the farms. Also, when we're looking at the Women's Coalition of Zimbabwe,
which is a coalition of women's organizations, and also individual feminists here in Zimbabwe. So there are also various thematic areas that are being looked at, and you'd know that throughout the journey of the women's movement, it has evolved over time. And when these organizations started, like Kunzwana Women's Association, Jekesa Funga Volimondo, Zimbabwe Women Resources Center and Network, the women then were organizing to whenever they identified gaps. For example, when they identified that women really needed to have the information and the computer skills for them to participate in economic empowerment, for example, then there was the Zimbabwe Women Resource Center and Network, where women would also go and have computer skills training. And also you'd find that there are also other organizations like Zimbabwe Women's Bureau, self-help development organizations that were focusing on economic empowerment of women. I just want to give examples of organizations that Mai Malunge was also working with, and some of the organizations she also helped found those organizations in terms of identifying the gaps that were there within the country. So because of the organizing, you find that women were also able to rally around issues of concern. For example, when we look at the legal age of majority, the women were also lobbying and advocating. We also know that the history of the women marginalization, that women were being treated as minors. So when they were organizing and also lobbying and advocating for their rights, then we also have the legal age of majority that began to also look at women as individuals in their own rights who can access different services, for example. And then we also have the wills and inheritance laws. Women were making so much noise in this country because of the tsika dzedu nemagariro anotarisa kuti ana baba nevakomana ndo vanofanira kunge vachiaccessa issue dzenhaka. So issues of wills and inheritance were very key and also important for women, especially when we look at their property rights and also empowerment issues. There's also the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Women really participated through the organizing, where they also were lobbying and advocating for their rights to be also included in the Constitution. And we see our Constitution as a very progressive one. So in the Women's Coalition of Zimbabwe, of which Kunzwana Women's Association is also a member, I've already highlighted that it's an organization that has women's organizations and also individuals who are part of that organization. And it's a coalition that is also looking at lobbying and advocating for women's issues and looking at various thematic areas. We also have a cluster that is focusing on women's participation in decision making, because we also see that that is also a gap that it's work in progress, and yeah, it's a struggle. So in that cluster, there's also empowerment of women, different programs that are run within the different geographic spaces, so that women also get to participate in decision making. We also have a women economic cluster, health cluster, peace cluster. These are just examples that I want to share with you, so that you see that this is a bigger movement, and that is involving women from all corners of the country. And we are also happy today that we are also witnessing the launch of this book in honor of Mai Malunge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Pamsoroi Mese, Pamsoroi guest of honor. It's a privilege for me to be asked to say anything at all
about Mai Malunge. Mai Malunge grew us as young officers in the Ministry of Women's Affairs, where we were bureaucratic activists working on issues of women and the emancipation of women, and walked us through what could be done, what was possible, what we needed to wait for, and different approaches. And it was always a joy for me to watch her act. As I read the book, I sort of said this could be actually a thriller because it has many threads. The first thread I want to talk about is the autobiography of Mama. Her life as a young girl, her early learnings, her exposure to different cultures in the different parts of the country, and the appreciation of diversity that came very early in her life. Her young family life, her marriage, her children that she was very proud of, the girl children and the 2 boys. Her life through colonial times and the struggles that were there living in Highfield, which was the epicenter of the liberation struggle for here. Experiencing it, the independence era, working and managing to navigate colonial bureaucracy. And the post-colonial era, what's in all, the land reform and the impact that it had on her work. There was the benefit for quite a few, but there was also the impact on many people who were the farm workers. Her diplomatic exposure quite interested me, finding out how the other world lived. So she was introduced to the other world very early on. And this, I think, informed her vision for her children. And particularly the girl children that she really wanted not to be housewives and whatever. I remember where she says, she said to Malunge, you met me riding a bicycle. I'm not going to stay at home. And then she graduated to a motorbike and then a car. It also is a thread of the professional woman. Her work as a social worker in Highfield, building communities from very diverse backgrounds and finding common threads among the different residents in Highfield. Working with the city council, working with the church, and building alliances with whoever could offer anything. There is a part where she walked through different corridors of power. At a very early age, she went to the city council, she went to different bureaucracies. She had a very sharp eye for identifying gaps and problems and finding solutions. And you will find in the book the different eras, how different contexts and how she reacted to different things. The HIV/AIDS work that they were talking about, the resettlement that happened, the independence era, and the challenges that came. She had relevance for each part of our development as a country. She had an eye for opportunity. She did not, in this book, you learn that you don't dismiss anyone. Everyone has something to offer. So at some church meetings, she met the Jesuits. And lo and behold, now she had a connection with Silveira House. She was now sending people for training in different places. She met the Germans, some German women who wanted a ride. And in a whatever, they were now helping her to fundraise. There was no one who was not relevant to Mai Malunge. She looked at people and worked with them and saw what they could bring to her cause. The explorer flying around Harare Air Force 60. And she has this Irishman who says, let's do it, Emma. So they commandeered an Air Force aeroplane to fly women around Harare. She took women everywhere, really trying to make sure that the women were not closed in their visions. To South Africa, to Malawi, to Beira, to Zambia, to field visits, took them to Chinoi Caves, to Great Zimbabwe, anywhere. These women were going on buses and on trips, really to broaden and also to lighten their burdens. And so she was the first tourist attaché for the country. It's not recognized. There is a part where she enters unknown territory, but her skills gave her confidence to enter ZRP as an outsider, going to work in an institution. And this is where you see the example of transformative leadership, where she looked at the program that was already there, tweaked it, and made it relevant to the modern things, brought income generating, brought skills for women, and then also taught women leadership. She first taught them that, she said, we were sorry, but this was the committee that helped in decision making and planning and everything. And so she exposed women to leadership and exposed police women to the world outside the camps. And those of you who have lived in institutions know, and you said the life was not so different from the farm workers because they lived in an institution. And it was important. The beginning of independence and also some of the bureaucratic greed that caught us, finding reasons to exclude people who were straightforward. So now there was a lot of donor money that was coming to Kunzwana, and it was in control of this woman who had no police in her CV. And so let's change the laws to exclude. And yeah, she was excluded because people had seen money. And I think it was the bureaucratic greed that sometimes cages us as bureaucrats. But you cannot put down a good woman. And while she was, I think she was planning to go and help, who was having a baby? Elizabeth or Becky? Yeah, so, and while she was supposed to be thinking about her future, the women came and said, there is still work to be done. And that's the birth of Kunzwana. And really working in an area that again required strategic alliances, realizing that the farmer's wife is a key entry point, and finding relevance and common ground with the farmer's wife. Working with the farmers, respecting their place, but also realizing that the farmers' wives sometimes also were women who had struggles, and their struggles were equally relevant to be addressed. So that was something that sometimes we always thought, oh, white people are privileged, they can never have any problems. She saw that, found relevance, and worked with them, and created an amazing partnership, which I think is still evident today that she created. The institution builder, Emma the institution builder, who in other parts she was an employee. Now she was the head of an organization and had to build it, as we now say, brick by brick. And working with the women's movement, working with the alliances in different areas, in the ministries, in in government, in the NGOs where she joined, as Grace was saying. Now she was a member of a network of women, and she was a member not only of the network here, she was a member of the national, the regional, the global network. She was in Beijing. And there was nothing impossible to Mai Malunge. And I think her advantage was her smooth operator. She was quiet. She was, but she always got what she wanted. She had a message, a clear message, and she put that through. She had no boundaries that to say, oh, I will not talk to these people, I will not talk to those people. Everyone was relevant. And the legacy that I take from here was to think outside the box. Quite a lot of what she did requires someone who thinks outside the box. If you think within the box, you will not achieve what even a quarter of Mai Malunge achieved. Everyone you meet has a purpose. There was this book about synchronicity where it said everyone you meet has a purpose. It's important you were meant to meet this person. And if you read this book, you will see how these people came into her life when she needed them to further her vision. And then, you know, this, is it Paulo Freire who says, go to the people and live with them. She lived in Greendale. She lived in Highfield in a house that even had a spare. But she would go and live with people. She would traverse the country, go to farm workers, go to their houses and all that. And so people really saw this person is genuinely trying to change our lives. This person is genuinely trying to walk with us. And she did walk with them. Also, that we should not teach people what they have not seen. So she organized a lot of exhibitions, tours and things where people saw and they said, if this can be done, I will do it. And that's how she motivated people into furthering their lives. And the issue to the ability to cross all boundaries, race, bureaucracy, borders, culture, to reach your goals. Right now, we have created so many boundaries for us. They belong to this party, they belong to that party, and we create boundaries. We can't work together. That was not Mai Malunge. That's not her legacy. Her legacy is to help women, you cross all boundaries. To be enterprising always. I still miss Gogo's peanut butter. I had enough stock until the end of last year, and then that was it. But she always found herself to have something to do that was always exciting and adventurous. The ability to balance being a mother, a wife, a partner, a professional, a motivator, a mentor to a lot of people, and an accompanier to many struggles is quite interesting. We also learned the importance of family. Her own family with her sister, who was also in the same field, Maimtero, the way they helped and supported each other. Her own children as they grew up to be people who even believed in her vision and supported her. And really do not let patriarchy stop you. I will always remember this saying of that the Lastly, I want to just read a paragraph on her description of Mkadzwe Mkomboni. She works seasonal jobs as a casual worker. Mostly, she did not work at all. She lives in one room with 4 or 5 of her own children. Another 3 are brought up by her husband. from other women. She has to deal with a cheating husband who eventually brings the HIV virus. She is raped, if not by other males in the compound. It is the farm manager who has slightly higher status over the farm workers. She must comply in order to secure her husband's work on the farm. Without a birth certificate, national identification, marriage certificate, school report, even record of a relative's death, mukadzi wemukomboni is as invisible as thin air. I still think that we still have a lot of vakadzi vemukomboni, no longer in the komboni, but even in our midst. And I think the struggle is just beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chitiga. At this point in time, please allow me to invite our guest of honor, Dr. Olivia Muchena. Dr. Olivia Muchena, her experience spans over 40 years in politics, government, academia, and NGO gender activism. Between 1995 and 2015, she held various ministerial portfolios, including Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Minister of State in Vice President's Office for Land Reform and Resettlement Program, Minister of Science and Technology Development, Minister of Women Affairs, Gender and Community Development, and Minister of Higher Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development. Simultaneously, she has also held political party leadership positions in the ZANU-PF, including as the Politburo Secretary for Science and Technology. Before entering politics in 1995, Dr. Muchena was a respected academic with extensive research and consultancy experience. She worked with many organizations, notably the Young Women's Christian Association, Scripture Union, the World Council of Churches, Central Committee and World Vision International Board, merging her faith and experience to empower people. In recent years, Dr. Muchena has been working with the International Leadership Foundation as the Vice Chairperson of the Africa Board and as facilitator and coach in transformational leadership. She is passionate about equipping young people, women, and professionals, particularly Christians, for leadership in politics and governance with integrity. Dr. Olivia Muchena is mentioned in the book as one of the first university students to be attached to Amai Malunge during the setting up of the Highfields Women's Club. So it is such an honor to welcome you, Dr. Muchena, to give us a few words and then to launch our book.
I was thanking the Malunge children, siblings, Kunzwana board and members and the others who participated in having this occasion. I sat here and listened to everything that everybody was saying. You know, in the Christian faith, we believe in the Holy Spirit telling you of things to come. And in Shona, they would even say, like the Holy Spirit. It's too holy to say gossip. When Runo was going through her speech, it was like we had sat together and written this speech, which I thought was mine, but now it's Runo's. I'll just read you my first paragraph and I will abandon the rest of my speech. Emma Malunge has woven a tapestry of her life in a most amazing way. The colorful threads being descriptions of each period of her life read like a movie which leaves you with a yearning to find out what happened next. Emma, or Amai Malunge as I used to call her, in telling her life story, weaves socio-economic and political environment of each time, including the vulnerabilities. She had the courage to conquer seemingly insurmountable challenges. I mean, that sounds like I was taking notes from Rulo's. I just came from Glen Forest to bury a loved one. And the pastor who talked about a good name being a legacy. I want to say what is left of my speech will talk about the impact and the influence of legacy and how we should be intentional or deliberate about leaving a legacy. I am going to make this book a required reading, Sally, for every person in the women's movement in Zimbabwe. It's required because, as you have said, I have more than 40 years. What I was hearing in the 70s, when I was a white teen and Amai Malunge were the senior members of the YWCA, I'm still hearing today. It's like the young generation have discovered women. That's why we need to go through that book so that we build on what has already been done and not spend time rediscovering the wheel. So it's a required reading for everybody in the women's movement. It is a legacy project. I mean, I have a son who is into filmmaking and he dreads each time I read a book or come from a meeting, I always say, there's another blockbuster. This is a blockbuster of life experiences. I was an academic. I want to recommend this book to every discipline in the social science faculty because there are nuggets of information that people don't know or only know through a particular perspective. But by simply telling her story, Amai Malunge brings out some nuances of politics, social life during the colonial period, post-colonial, but even traditional, indigenous. She really has woven a tapestry. The influence bit, I could almost cry, hearing now the confirmation as the women from Kunzwana were confirming what I read in the book, how lives have been transformed. Maskana, I salute you. She has established an organization to take care of orphans from being a compound woman. What impact, what influence can we ask for? I find this book a mine of information. I like her style of writing. I am a writer. I'm not here to promote my book or books. But there's just a style of writing that I find very easy to read, very natural, very easy language. When I attempted to do an autobiography, it got so complicated. Again, I went to my son and said, how can I do this? He says, Mama, we don't want to see voluminous things these days. We have no time. Serialize your biography. Write about each aspect of your life as a separate book. Yeah. What you have read, what I have published so far is not the biographic. But when I wrote about my work life, 40 years of work, 7 jobs without a single application. One of my other sons says, Mama, now I know you. After reading my manuscript, now I know you. I want to challenge everybody in my hearing to write a book about yourself. Yeah? So that your children, your grandchildren, or your relatives will know you. But more important, he even said, now I understand why you do certain things. I didn't want him to elaborate those things. Each one of us has a story to tell. And Malunge has written a brilliant story, not just one, but multiple stories within one book. I want to highly, highly recommend A Stitch in Time. I thought she was going to complete because we were told A Stitch in Time saves 9. So I'm very curious to find out why we stopped at A Stitch in Time. The other impact which Rulo referred to was how she did daring things. I mean, that bit about the aeroplane, you guys, you don't know what that airport was like during colonial period. I went to study overseas. When I came back with a husband, a child, and degrees, there was a whole contingent of people to welcome us. And, everybody else was very tight. My mother was one of those daring women. The moment she saw me, she would and and my father was busy trying to say, keep quiet. That was the airport, not even the aeroplane. How did she do it? I found that very fascinating. Doing daring things, even speaking daring things. I would have liked her to write a little bit more about her husband. How do you say to your husband, Makandiona ndichikwira bhasikoro? You found me riding a bicycle, so taking me back to work. Yeah. And finally, the ability to balance multiple roles. For me, I just wish that she was still around. We could set up one consultancy after another. How to manage role conflicts. All of us here have role conflicts. I had one these past few days. I didn't know. I prayed that funeral would be in the morning, and God had me because we just finished it at 1 or so. Because I had these roles, I had to attend to that, but I wanted to be here. Part of my family members saw me leaving early. Said, "Where are you going?" I thought we were going home with you. I said, "No. I mean, that is a role I must fulfill." But Emma was able to somehow manage those. A good name is better than riches. A good name will open doors for generations. And you guys are so fortunate that you have a good name that has been bequeathed to you. May God help us all to have a legacy and to leave a good name. Thank you. I hope those were few
Few and important words. Dr. Mchena, I'm going to still ask you to remain in the front. And I know they were not expecting it, but I am going to invite Vana Amai Malunge, Amy, Elizabeth, Evelyn, known as she knows herself, Edward, and Evans is not here. I'm going to ask you to just come to the front so that as we launch the book, you are also there for the photo moment with Dr. Mchena. Come ahead.
is with great honor and privilege to launch A Stitch in Time by Emma Malunge.
Thank you very much. And to wrap up our program, finish up today, we have got some recognitions and awards that we would like to present to a few members. Again, I'm going to ask Dr. Mchena to come through. And Natasha, uya imboda uchengetwa na gogo akatadza uchengetwa so ndichadedzera mazita kana ndadedza zita renyu ndokumbira kuti if you can just come up. Natasha, you can stand there. I'm the one that's not in the photo.
This is really something that Amai herself wrote in her book and wanted these people to be recognized for walking the journey that she's done with them, and their names that she literally put in her book and in her own writing. So us, the children, felt that we wanted to honor Amai's wish by making sure that these people are recognized as part of the organization, part of her life and part of her legacy. So that's what this is about.
So Lillian Siziba, thank you. Elizabeth Maroa.
Pictures.
Joyce Manua. Letitia Chingama. Anyway.
It's called the succession.
Thank you.
Anna Mpawaenda.
She was my senior at school, you know, at university. Thank you so
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukena. So thank you very much to the family for embracing us and also accepting us to be Vanala Amai. Yes. Thank you for that. I'm going to invite Becky to give us our vote of thanks as we close our event this afternoon.
Today is a day we never saw coming. We were in the process with Amai writing the book and telling us about it. And as Tambu has already indicated, Amai wanted to do this herself, and we were walking the journey with her. Little did we ever know that she wasn't going to be here to be part of this. But I think as she's watching wherever she is and looks down to all of you being here and being part of this, and we're saying this as a family from the bottom of our hearts, for the journeys that you've all walked with our mom, for the support that you've given to our mom. And actually it was interesting when Dr. Olivia was speaking, and I remember when I joined the Kellogg Foundation to work, my first ever job, you remember those days, when I first ever started working in Africa, and my first ever job with Kellogg Foundation and working with the Professor Rukuni, most of you who know him. He said to me after a few days for me joining the organization, he came back and in front of the whole team, he said, you know I wondered where you get this from. I just gathered you're Mrs. Malunge's daughter. And so that totally discredited any brilliance that I had, because all of it went to my mom. And what a pleasure. It's a bit like what we're saying about the name. Just recognizing that I was Mrs. Malunge's daughter changed the dynamics of so many people that I was working with. Not because of anything, not because of politics, but just the commitment she had to development. And I think for us to also be part of that fraternity of development, because all of us are in it, and all of us were part of the Kunzwana development in one shape or form, actually makes us just as much as you guys enjoy the legacy of our mom. And much as we still hurt, and there's a lot of pain in terms of losing our mom, I think just having you guys here and sharing this with us lightens our hearts and actually makes us feel that her life was very much worth living. So thank you so much for making that commitment to be here with us. So I've been given the honor of actually passing this on to a Kunzwana member who will then, as we say in Shona, vanotishitsira kumakomo.
Zvakanaka maita basa nekutitambidza, asi taitira kuti
isi sekunzwana member ndakamirira mamembers ose ekunzwana and tichirakidza mabasa edu ekunzwana emaoko zvese zvamuri kuona izvo ndezvemaoko ekunzwana member. So tati our guest of honor, whether you'd like it or not, ndo mabasa edu atiri kuita atakasirwa namai Malunge. We thank you very much. Moona mabasa edu aya.
I like it very much. Overwhelming.
Thank you
so much.
You're welcome. Amazita.